On today's episode of Life is Just Another Task Analysis, we're continuing on from last week's Chapter 1 breakdown. So if you're new here, welcome. Grab your favorite drink, sit back and relax. This is going to be your stress-free mini study session for all things ABA. So continuing on page 4, Chapter 1, we're moving on to the attitudes and assumptions of science. There are 6 attitudes of science: empiricism, experimentation, replication, determinism, parsimony, and philosophical doubt. Empiricism. This one is big in ABA and it ties in further along with one of the 7 dimensions of ABA. But for now, empiricism, you got to think back of when you're taking science classes, right? Empirical evidence. What is that? Facts. Numbers, temperatures, lengths. So empiricism are things that you are able to observe so you can see and measure and everybody can agree on. A great example for this is the fit community. What are they always talking about? My macros, my protein, my carbs, the number of hours I slept. So when they're comparing protein powders, all of that is objective, right? 40 grams is 40 grams. But when you talk about what's the best tasting protein powder, then you get into opinions. So remember, empiricism, empirical facts. Experimentation. Again, science in ABA. So experimentation just means that we're using multiple experiments to prove that one event or one variable actually changes something, right? So if you're trying to bake the best bread and you're tweaking the yeast, the amount of yeast that you put, but everything else stays exactly the same, then you are manipulating that variable, the yeast, to see how good the bread comes out, right? So based on that, you're making a functional relationship. And in behavior, we have functional relationships where we determine that an environmental variable has an effect on a specific behavior. So we get a functional analysis. Replication. This is big, especially if you're trying to get a research study published in one of the journals in our field. So you need to be able to replicate this intervention. This is how we get all of our evidence-based interventions that we implement throughout ABA with all of our learners and clients. So if it cannot be replicated, we don't care about it. Why? Because ABA is a science, right? And the first thing we want to be able to do is, cool, you're able to prove that this is happening under this condition with this individual. Can you replicate it? How many times can it be replicated? The more it is able to replicate and be able to give you the same result, the stronger that intervention is going to be. Replication. So determinism basically means that everything that occurs and takes place in the world is based on some sort of law and order. So Cooper talks about fatalism and accidentalism, which would be great if you are an author and you're writing fantasy romance novels. So this is where you get like fated mates. Oh my gosh, they're fated mates. They're meant to be, or they accidentally fell in love. They accidentally got married. Bring it back to reality, right? This doesn't happen in the real world. You have to follow laws and orders to get married. So that's all it means, that we are not going to just assume that things happen out of nowhere. Parsimony. Basically, we're going to keep it as simple as possible. We're talking basic needs first. So are we looking at, are they hungry? Are they tired? Are they thirsty, right? Cover your basic needs and then move on to the immediate environment. Are they wearing shoes that are too tight for them, that are causing them pain? Do they have a tag that's digging into their skin? That's very irritating. They don't know how to communicate functionally, so they're screaming and they're crying to try to let you know that, hey, something's not right. And then you can move on to, okay, ruled everything out. Is it medical? Do they have a cold? Do they have the flu, right? Maybe parents didn't tell you that they were sick or that they threw up last night. Happens all the time. So is it a medical necessity, right? Something going on that they need to get fixed. And then you can move on to the function of the behavior. Philosophical doubt. This is a big one. I know it's in chapter 1, but we really do need to be better about applying it in the field of ABA after you become a BCBA. Don't become one of those BCBAs that's like, I'm the BCBA and I know better, and don't give your RBTs or your staff an explanation of why you're doing something, why the client is not making progress, why it's been 3 months and you haven't seen a change, right? You need to do better as a provider, as a clinician, and use that philosophical doubt. Let's open our minds and think, okay, maybe I was wrong, or maybe the environment changed and now it's no longer attention seeking, but it's escape, right? All right, so there you have it. We discussed the attitudes of science and applied behavior analysis from chapter 1 in more bite-sized manageable pieces. We use everyday examples so that it clicks and you're not trying to memorize all these key terms. Instead, you're applying them in your everyday life and situations. So what does that look like when you're running session? Philosophical doubt, empiricism, replication, parsimony, right? You are walking yourself through your everyday life using these key terms to better prepare you for that exam on your fieldwork journey.